So, exactly, yes. The saying does go, we've saved the best for last, and I can definitely agree that the next speaker will be fantastic. Of course, all of the presentations were fantastic on an equal level, but I would also put forward that we may slightly change the phrase to say we saved the most controversial for last, because I do think this is a bit of an interesting topic. Maybe not everyone fully agrees. I'll let you be the judge, but I think it's always nice to play devil's advocate. So we will end more in that direction, as the next topic is AI overregulation. Another interesting stance. So presenter Chris Piska is a professor of the University of Vienna, where he has been researching and teaching for 30 years. Chris also teaches at Danube University Krems, FH Campus Wien, and University of Krakow. Please join me in welcoming him. He's already here, so let's make some noise and welcome him to the stage for his presentation.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure for me to be here tonight, especially with such a wonderful audience. And of course, I'm not only the last one, I'm also a lawyer. So you might think this type is gonna talk complicated, boring bullshit. And well, I'm gonna try to present my point otherwise. And what I'm going to talk about is overregulation. Overregulation is something that doesn't only concern architects. It concerns us all. And in this connection, we must say that one of the biggest legal problems and also problems of our society is the regulation strategy that is applied, especially by the European Union, of course, but also by its member states. And that is something that we have to be aware of. Now I'm gonna show you some videos, and I'm really curious how you might think about them. You all might have realized that this fine was imposed on X, and after this happening, after the EU Commission had imposed this 120 million euro fine, Elon Musk said these things. Now, what do you think? Is the European Union a bureaucratic monster?
So yeah, I would say that there is a problem with a bureaucracy. I mean, I am a German. I know a thing or two about the bureaucracy things, but I think it is rich coming from someone like Elon Musk, who, well, doesn't care much about things like data privacy and decency.
Well, that's something else. But we're not going to talk about Elon Musk and his attitudes right now. Just about what he said about the European Union. And this is something we will now listen also to other people from the United States and see what they say. And then we will see, is this true or is it just bullshit? Of course, the next one.
Is that European Union or is it, who did that? European Union or UK? European Commission. Oh, that's a nasty one. Iemand is dat voor me te herstellen. But no, it's a tough thing. I don't think it's right. I don't think it's right. I don't see, how they can do that. I'll speak about it later. I'm going to get a full report on it. Look, Europe has to be very careful. We're doing a lot of things. We want to keep Europe Europe. Europe is going in some bad directions. It's very bad for the people. We don't want Europe to change so much. You're going in some very bad directions. That's a good thing.
Okay, are we going into a bad direction? Let's see. And the last video, JD. Okay. So you see, I like to polarize with my talks.
The Trump administration is troubled by reports that some foreign governments are considering tightening the screws on U.S. tech companies with international footprints. Now, America cannot and will not accept that, and we think it's a terrible mistake, not just for the United States of America, but for European countries. And let me be emphatic about this point. America wants to partner with all of you. We want to embark on the AI revolution before us with a spirit of openness and collaboration. But to create that kind of trust, we need international regulatory regimes that fosters the creation of AI technology rather than strengthens it. And we need our European friends in particular to look to this new frontier with optimism rather than trepidation.
Okay, so that's what they say in the United States. And what we are doing here in Europe, what the EU Commission does, is creating laws at a pace and with a number that is really, really too high. So many regulations come out of the European Union that it's not possible to take pace with it. We have that in the AI field, and I'm also working in many other fields of modern technologies, not only climate protection and cryptocurrencies, data protection, and all these fields. And we have the same problem everywhere. I will now explain to you how it comes to that and how it creates problems that it goes very slowly. We have a few basic principles, okay, that are very important for regulation and that creates a necessity to obey them, because if you overlook them, then you regulate outside the constitutional scope. We have the Constitution. We have the Constitution in every single state, and we have the EU Constitution that contains the basic rules that the European Union has to obey to. And what is this? We have to watch the legislative competences. The EU cannot do anything, just where the EU is competent. She can create regulations. Then we have to watch the principles of proportionality and subsidiarity. The European Union should only act where she can do it better than the member states. Then also, every law must be precise. You must be able to understand it, and that is important. Modern laws are so complex most of the times that even specialists, experts, cannot understand them properly, and that leads to the contrary of what we expect from law. We expect clarity from law, and we expect that it creates order. But if laws are not clear enough, they rather create disorder, and people try to put them aside and ignore them, or do things just in order to fulfill them formally. But what really happens doesn't interest them anymore. That's the problem of overregulation. Okay? So what is even more important is the rule of law. We will talk about that. So that law should be the basis of every state action. This is also something that we keep forgetting more and more. And then we have the fundamental rights. Fundamental rights who create and secure our freedoms, the pluralistic way our society works. Okay? And these fundamental rights, when it comes to overregulation, it's especially the right to property, if you think of businesses, and it's the right to economic freedom. Okay, so you need, obviously, a legislative competence if you act as a regulator. This is something you can outline it, no mandate, no action. So if there is no mandate, the EU shouldn't regulate. The EU keeps forgetting that fact and overestimates its mandates and its competences. So as you can see here, this is one of the biggest problems when it comes to overregulation. The principles, wait a minute, that really doesn't work fine. Okay, now it's fine. Okay, let's just focus on the AI Act. This was issued on the internal market legal basis. But what does it do? The AI Act doesn't really help to overcome barriers. It rather creates barriers for the European IT and AI industry. So they keep saying, and of course that is true, yeah? We have now one regulation for every member state, for 27 member states, of course, yeah? But the problem is that these rules are so heavy that foreign businesses sometimes refrain from giving us their powerful AI. You could really see it with the Apple iPhone. It came with a quite powerful AI in the States, but they didn't deliver that to us. It was delivered to us with a very, very restricted AI. I have this iPhone, I hate it. Okay, so what we are doing with this regulation is we are probably keeping businesses that create powerful AI from making business in Europe. And that is something, you can like it or not. You won't like it, I don't like it either. But people like Elon Musk, they create these mechanisms. Google, Apple, what have you. Yeah? And the problem is, if they are not interested to make business here in Europe, we will never get ahead with our AI mechanisms. And we are using American mechanisms most of the time. So that is a big problem here. And this regulation creates new regulatory friction because these rules are too unclear, there are too many, and at the same time, they keep businesses from developing AI mechanisms here in Europe. So the principle of proportionality, it's quite easily explained. You need a legitimate aim, okay? The measure has to be effective to reach this aim, and you always have to ask yourselves, is there a less restrictive measure? If there is a less restrictive measure, the principle of proportionality isn't obeyed. Yeah? You always have to take, as a legislator, you have to take the least restrictive measure to reach a goal. Okay? This is also something that the EU keeps forgetting. We will soon see more examples for that. And the principle of subsidiarity, that's also something that the EU is keeping out of sight. The EU wants harmonization now more than ever. And it has many, many ideologies, new ideologies that it hasn't had before. Before there was the ideology to say we want to help our economy to foster, to grow, and to be strong, which is a good goal, and which is the good basis of the EU, and to prevent wars and create collaboration and things like that. But now we have too many goals. We want to be ethical. We want to be CO2 neutral. We want to do climate protection. We want to save the whole world right now. And the problem is, if we want to do that, we can only do it with the help of others. If we don't have this help, and we keep on going that way, we will do nothing but question our own strength and our own power and our economic prosperity. We need partners to do what we do, and if we don't have partners, we will not be able to rule the world. But that is what the EU is now trying to do. Okay, laws must be precise, not 100% precise, that's not possible, but they should be sufficiently precise. Yeah? And if you see here, that is a typical penalty provision in EU regulations. The penalties are normally very high. You can see 35 million euros or 7% of the total worldwide annual turnover. Now that's something, okay? But these fines, these penalties, they are not based on clear-cut rules. So if you want to avoid such a penalty, what can you do? Well, not very much, because you don't have clear-cut rules. So it's up to the authority who is entitled to issue this penalty to decide, did you do it wrong or didn't you do it wrong? Yeah? It was also in the case of this X penalty that X got, that this was a very, very unclear provision. So you could have said X is guilty, or you could have said X is not guilty. And that is probably what our American friends or enemies, whatever you might think, meant when they said what they said. Okay? And it's always a good idea to look behind the scenes. Yeah? And what I also say, it's not interesting for me who says something. It's interesting for me what he or she says. It's not interesting who says something. Now, we see these penalty provisions are quite unclear here. You can see non-compliance with the prohibition of DEI practices referred to in Article 5. So this is just a mentioning of a provision and other provisions in these regulations, and they are partly so unclear that you can't say what is forbidden and what is allowed. Okay, the rule of law, it has It has several aspects. Okay? So you can see we also used, of course, we used AI to create these slides. Yeah? You may like it or not. Well, it's at least something that shows you what is inside. And now, if we have unclear and imprecise laws, we have uncertainty. Law shouldn't create uncertainty. Law should create certainty. That's very, very important. Yeah? If laws are unclear and vague, you lose this certainty. What happens? What happens? If you may think that any law is better than an unclear one, you're wrong. An unclear law leads to miscommunication. It leads to misthinking, because you feel safe because you think we have a law. It takes care of a problem. It takes care of us. But what happens? The authorities who are entitled to enforce this law, what will they do if the law is unclear? What will they do? They will do what they want. And this is not what is our goal. We had that centuries before in the monarchy, yeah, when we said we don't want the emperor to decide what's going to happen. We want the people to decide. And now we can decide to a certain extent, and we let the people that decide upon us, we let them make unclear laws. And some people even say, more of it, more of it. If we have a problem in our world, and we have many problems, what do people say? They say, okay, let's make a new law. And with the new law, everything will be better. That's not true. The problem is the power of the law isn't so great. It can be helpful, and we need it to keep up order in the streets, to keep up our society working. We're not anarchists. Sometimes it might be quite appealing to think to live in an anarchy, okay? But it wouldn't work. Society wouldn't work, even nowadays. Yeah? So we need clear laws to keep up the values of our society and our freedoms. That's what I just explained. Just one sentence to it. Unclear and vague laws lead to arbitrary exercise of power. That is what I said. The authorities can do what they want and not what's prescribed in the law, because it's so vague. Okay, if we have vague laws and we want more clarity, what can we do? We can either amend these laws, make them better, or make new laws, but the legislator always makes laws and doesn't have time to amend laws that he has just passed. So what do? The EU created a new way of explaining people what they should do. Guidelines and non-binding documents. Isn't that great? Now, we have an imperfect law, we have a vague law. It's not even clear to whom it is applicable. Yeah? And then the Commission comes and gives us guidelines. They have many people sitting there. They have time to think about the gaps and the vague areas in laws. So they give out a handbook or a guideline, and they tell us what we should do. The problem is, these guidelines, they come from an undemocratic institution. The European Commission is not entitled to pass laws. We have the European Parliament and the European Council. They are entitled. Now, we have these guidelines. People tend to do what's in the guidelines, but what's in the guidelines isn't something that comes from the democratic regulator. And that is a big problem from the perspective of the rule of law. This isn't how it should be. We have to say that clearly. That's not okay. Yeah? But people don't realize it. And most people don't talk about it. They just don't talk about it. If those guidelines come, you could also say, I'm not interested to do what's in the guideline, yeah? But maybe the courts or the authorities might follow them, but they don't have to. The problem is, if you pass law as a democratic regulator, then it should be the way that is prescribed, using the norms that are prescribed by the Constitution and using the legislators that are prescribed by the Constitution. That's not happening in the European Union. Okay, that is what I just explained. We can skip that. Yes, and that's also what it's going on. No, we can just proceed to this. This is about the protection of property. Now it comes to fundamental rights. Yeah? And the protection of property is something that is essential to our legal and system and to our economic system, of course. And there it is most important that you realize any regulation that the regulator imposes on businesses is maybe a problem with the right to property, because you cannot make use of your property as you want. And the more regulations come, the more you have to ask yourselves as a lawyer, and I'm also a constitutional lawyer, I see that those laws, they overdo it. Yeah, they overdo it, and that happens especially since the Green Deal started, since 2019. Okay, so I don't have to go into more detail here. Let's see how this works now. Yeah, I was thinking it might go like that. Okay. So, what we just discussed, these EU guidelines, they fail to meet the basic principles and they ignore the primary law. That is the constitution of the European Union. Okay, what about the separation of powers? Yeah, the legislator should stick to its task, and the authorities, like the Commission, should also stick to their task. But these things become more and more merged. That's not good. We know why we have separation of powers, yeah? Because it's important, okay? So, judicial protection, that's also a problem, because if you have unclear laws, the powers of the courts, they get too great. They have too many powers, and that shouldn't be. Even the courts, we're not in the case law system here. Yeah? We're in the continental European system. Also, the courts shouldn't make own laws. They should fulfill the law, and they should give it to the people who ask them to decide upon a case. Yeah. So, that is a big problem, and these problems I just explained to you now. What can we do? What can we do against it? There are a few means that help us with that. Something can be done. I'm a constitutional lawyer, I also know a lot about the constitution of the European Union. And if you look at the laws that the European Union passed last 5, 6 years, they all have the same problems. So what can you do? You have to look at these laws. They impose too many requirements, too many obligations, too severe obligations, but they can't reach their goals properly. And that's the biggest problem here. Yeah? So you have to take a deep look at these laws, and they're all related to certain actions or certain things happening in the real world. Take a look at such a happening and at the law that is regulating it. Then you will see that in many cases, with the Constitution, with the fundamental rights, and with the EU Constitution, with the primary law, you can interpret the laws in a way that they are more restrictive. It's possible, yeah. And I'm doing it if I'm asked to do it. Then I look at the law and say, okay, we can interpret the law in a better way, yeah, that it obeys the Constitution, the fundamental rights, the primary law, better than if you just read it and if you don't think about it. So that's what we can do. And what I would advise the European Union, because we all need it, we want it to exist further on, yeah, it should get better in my eyes, because it was never so bad as it acted during the last years. And that's a big problem. So it should get better, and it should remember, yeah, this institution should remember the basic values of our constitutions. And it should stick to the basic principles of the constitutions, like the rule of law, like I mentioned it, like the fundamental rights, like the principle of proportionality. And it should also keep that in mind and make the laws accordingly. So lawyers normally will defend every legal action. I don't do this. I would say laws, we should have less laws. We should have much clearer laws, and they should be precise, and they should be short, yeah, so that they give clear-cut. They tell us in a clear way what we should do and what we shouldn't do, and especially for businesses. The businesses have so many obligations right now that it is hardly possible to fulfill them, and it costs a lot of money, it costs nerves, it costs human power, yeah? And this in a time of crisis that we unfortunately have right now. So these laws that the European Union should pass or should amend during the next years, they should be very, very short, they should be clear, and they shouldn't try to reach unreachable goals. That's the most important thing. And they should remember what we already knew years before. Yeah? And we shouldn't think that more regulation is better regulation, and that is important. Okay? And now the last words. Okay? The last words are to Mr. I'll be back. Okay? The one and only Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Don't follow trends, I outlast them. They have been selling shortcut since before I learned how to bench press. The miracle pill, the 6-minute solution, the next big thing. I've seen thousands and thousands of the next big thing. Ads explode, hype sells, and people buy. What's the big worse? But real progress doesn't trend, it endures. One breath at a time, one day at a time, again. It's not about that. It's about your commitment to quality. You want results? Stop chasing the new and start trusting the proven. You're trying to prove.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much once again to Chris for that wonderful, very dynamic and thought-provoking presentation. We are running a bit short on time, so we don't have time for questions and answer related to this presentation, but you can of course ask any and all questions in our panel discussion, which is coming up next. So thank you so much again, Chris.